Okay, it is great to be here. I always love this whole idea, this Super Thursday, and just gearing us all up in just a compact amount of time that people can do. And I just love being here with you. I've always loved being at this congregation. A helper suitable, you know. And so does this work back there? Maybe I have to turn it on. Okay, I wonder if this one will go that length. So just go to the next slide. If somebody can, she can't hear me, can she? Okay, thank you. Well, we turn to Genesis 2, and we know that that's where this phrase is found. And that God saw the man, and for the first time in all of his creation, as you know, it says. So I see Joe back there now. All right. So it may be possible that one of the women just needs to sit there and in case it doesn't reach. And I'll tell you when. So it says that God created a help meet for him, or we know that the word also means suitable for him. So a help suitable, that New American Standard even translates it that way. But good help is hard to find. You know, help usually comes in one of 5 ways. You've got the people that say, what was I thinking? I think I'm one of those kind of people. Like, want to be so helpful, but then, what was I thinking? Because these are the kind of people that, like, help the elderly get out the door of the nursing home, or they see a child in the grocery store, a toddler just struggling from the buggy to reach some kind of sugar pops or something like that, and you say, oh, well, help me. It's like, what was I thinking? Because we don't always need to be that kind of a helper. Then you have the looking busy helper, and there are a lot of strategies that go along with this, like I'll tell you when, at the fellowship meals. You know, it's really easy to look busy. There's several tricks that you can do, like if the ice is already filled up, I think I had the wrong one. If the ice is already filled up in the cups, you can just go over there and open the cooler and just kind of scoop around in there, and you can move the front ones to the back, and it really looks like you're doing something. Then there is the let me help you inhale and exhale helper. And these are the people that will put squash on your plate before you can say, I don't like squash. And they can tie your shoes, and they can help you finish your sentences and those kind of things. And sometimes I just hide from these people because I just want to put my own straw in my cup. I have the no-help helpers who you don't even know why they're there. They just kind of showed up. I guess it was for extra credit or something. And they just keep looking at their watch to see how many more seconds it is before they leave. And then in Huntsville, Alabama, you have the analytical helpers. You know, in the 50s, Warner von Braun moved there, and we haven't had a minute apiece since then because we have so many engineers that want to help us and tell us the right way to do everything. So if you're planning a meal and say you are counting the number of chairs at the table, and you're multiplying that by the number of tables, so you know how many napkins to count out. These people just peer over your shoulder and say you're doing that backwards. All you have to do is take the cube root of the facility, of the building, because it's 3 floors, and then divide that by the hypotenuse to account for the stairwell, and see how easy it is if you just do it logically. So, good help, help suitable. It's hard to find. In fact, Proverbs 31 tells us about the wife, about the woman who can find a virtuous woman, for her price is far above rubies. And we're familiar with that verse, but think about the inspired word of God saying it's hard to find suitable. So I'm going to make sure, yeah, my green light is on. Okay, did I pick up the right one? I'm going to try both of them. Okay, intentional help. So if we're going to be suitable help, if we're going to be good help, I mean, there's hardly ever help that is unintentional, right? I mean, sometimes we can help a case out unintentionally, like we might post something to Facebook to say this is a terrible, evil thing, and we end up drawing a lot of attention to something that maybe people were ignoring to start with. That would be about the only kind of thing I could think of that was unintentionally helping, something that maybe would, in that case, it would be something we don't want to help. But in the case where we try to help, it's got to be intentional. So I wanted to talk about today some ways that we have to be intentional in being that woman that's hard to find, that help that's hard to find. And intentional in faithfulness. And you can read the screen there. We have all ages here, so I'm going to be as discreet as I can, but I don't see how we can look at Genesis 2 and talk about a help suitable without talking about this area, without talking about that we are an intentional help physically in the bedroom. Next slide, I think. Okay. What are you saying to me through the window? We are playing charades back here, and I have no idea. Okay. I have a lot of clicks, so it always makes it hard when it's that way, but that's the way we're going to do it, and we're going to get through this. So, faithfulness means, number one, habitual participation in something. I mean, God is faithful. God is faithful to us. The sun rises every single day. The seasons come every year. His mercy endures forever. He is faithful. We understand that that means regular participation in something. So when we talk about the bedroom and we talk about faithfulness, we're talking about something that is regular. In fact, it was designed for attachment. Next slide. Designed for attachment. In Genesis 2:24, the verse is very familiar to us, I hope, that for this cause, this creation of man and woman, and this very first woman in this very first marriage, for this cause, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall be one flesh. Well, that can mean a plethora of things, I know. But it is not without meaning of a physical relationship here. That it's designed for the two to become one. And the cool thing about this is the more that we know about science, the more that we learn about our great God and our Creator, and the more we understand that none of this could have ever happened accidentally. So there are some things that happen during this activity that are addictive. And there are some parts of the brain that record what happens. And there are reward systems that are in place. And we think about in the hippocampus, for example, part of the brain. And then there's the hypothalamus. And when I'm studying all these things, I think, woo, it's the hippo song all over again. Hip, hip, hooray, God made all of us. And I know that's what the man's thinking, because the part of his brain in the hippocampus that sex drive is 2.5 times back up. It's 2.5 times bigger than the females. And so when we think men have this on the brain a whole lot more time-wise than women, the reason we think that is because it's true. It's 2.5 times bigger for him. And so when God created a help suitable, he created one person to help with that. One person. And it's designed for attachment. Also, when this happens, there are certain hormones that are sent to a certain part of the brain, and the part of the brain is the same one that is attached to drug addiction, and that is attached to Pavlov. So it's a reward center, basically, in the brain, and the feel-good hormone, dopamine, floods that. And the brain evaluates that this is a pleasurable activity, and it records that, and it basically attaches the person to that. So we are addicted by design to each other. The problem is that God designed that for a husband and a wife. But we can't stop the brain from doing what it does when people choose other routes. And so that's why things are so awry. That's why things are so problematic. Because the design is for husband and wife. But it still works when children are abused. It still works when people choose devious behaviors, and when the world says experiment with everything. This attachment still works. Oxytocin also is released at that time. That's a bonding hormone. It's the same one for babies and mothers, skin to skin. It bonds you together. God is amazing. But we, as the suitable help, are the ones. Next slide. And so, and click that one time and it'll start moving. Click that slide. Or just, yeah, there you go. So, we as the women, and I've turned my phone off 100 times and now I realize it's my laptop that's dinging. So will you just let it ding? Is anybody OCD that can't deal with the dings? I'm going to have to go with the dings here. But circle a date on the calendar. Make this happen, because as women with responsibilities and children, and our part of our hypothalamus is not as big, or our part of our hippocampus isn't as big, we can let this go easily for the things that are the more urgent. But we have to make that time because it's so very important. And so, you know, while a lot of people will say, well, spontaneous is the way to go or whatever, spontaneous may not happen, but happens. And so maybe send your husband a text that says this date and this time is what I'm thinking about. And he'll get very excited, and that will happen. That will for sure happen. Next slide. So another sense of faithfulness. One thing is regular. God is faithful, we're regular. But another sense of faithfulness is that there are no others. That's the wedding vow, isn't it? Forsaking all others. And from that point on, it's not fair game anymore for other people to be involved. It's just you. Click. There is one man I can be alone with. We're going to do some math. That's the number one. There is one man I can be alone with. And I'm talking about anywhere. Not in the bedroom, but anywhere. I'm not going to ride in the car with another man. I'm not going to go out here in the teacher workroom, and if another man comes in, even though it's completely innocent, and no one would ever think anything about it, I'm going to nonchalantly step out of that room. Because if it's a policy of always 100% of the time, then those times when maybe it wasn't so innocent on somebody's part, or you were rationalizing that this is okay, then you're not going to do those if you don't do those. If you say, I will never be alone with a person of the opposite sex. My husband came back to the church building the other day, and he was in the secretary's car driving, and I thought, what in the world? They had been to lunch with a bunch of people. He had went with the youth minister. He was in the car with the youth minister when he left. Well, it had so happened that the youth minister had to take everybody home, but I thought, still, this is policy. We never do that. And then they opened the back door and everybody else got out. So, you know, that was a time when I thought, we have this policy. Why would this ever happen? So it just doesn't happen. You have to get those other people in the back seat for that to happen. The next one come up. There are 0 secrets I can keep from my husband. If we're going to be faithful and we're going to protect our marriage against anything else, against divorce and against affair, there's 0 secrets I can have from my husband. If I have a secret from my husband, it better be his birthday tomorrow, and it better be a secret in the closet that I need to wrap. There are 0 secrets. And so if there are texts that you are not telling your husband about, if there are any kind of encounters that we're not sharing with our husband, then that's a danger zone. That is already really across the line if there is something that I can't tell my husband. And then faithfulness, next. 4 divided by 2 is 2. That's math. But which 2? I'm just going to say be extremely careful about these friendships that are 2 couples all the time together. You can have 6 people. You can have 8 people. You can interchange, and we go out to eat with this one this time and this one that time. But this going on vacation with, and this is not your brother and sister-in-law. This is not your parents. They're not your children. This going on vacation with, and constantly every weekend, the 4 of you are together. You didn't marry 3 people. You married 1. And you married your best friend. And the reason that I am so determined to bring this up is because Satan just keeps playing the same card every time. And I keep seeing that card, and it brings tears, and it breaks families, and it hurts children for a lifetime. And it keeps being this. I found out my spouse was having an affair, and the scenario I see, I know it happens other ways, and in fact it's going to be both ways if there's 4 people there. But I keep seeing that the husband's having an affair, and nobody knows who it is yet. First it comes out that he's unfaithful to her, and then she has to find out who it is. And sometimes she's pouring her heart and soul to that person, and it turns out to be what? Her best friend. Because they did everything together. There were the 4 of them. And there's a temptation there because, look, you've got these 2 people and you've got these 2 people. And this man sees this woman's faults at home. And he sees the clutter, and he lives with exhausted, and he lives with stomach virus. But when he sees this woman over here that he's with all the time, that they laugh and talk, and the 4 of them have all these good times, all he sees is the good times. And all she sees the same. So it's a very, very dangerous situation. So forsaking all others means my husband's my best friend, and he's the one that I'm going to spend the most time with, and we are not going to have a foursome marriage. Okay, now next, intentional in respect. Intentional in respect. Next, click. Okay, so you may have heard the survey about asking the men and the women, asking the men first. It was just a survey to men, and that's one of the problems that the fault finders found with the survey. So there were 400 men that they asked, if you could only have one thing in a relationship, either or, love or respect, which one would it be? And the men overwhelmingly said respect. Then a few years later, after a lot of criticism from the feminists really, who said, we don't want to respect our husbands. They don't, that wasn't, you didn't even ask the women. So they asked the women, they had a huge sample of women, which do you want more, love or respect? And overwhelmingly, it was love. Now we want both. We all want both. I understand that. But men are designed differently. And they are designed to lead the home. And as leaders, inborn, they have a few different design mechanisms than women do, and they want respect. And we, as an intentional help suitable, need to be respectful to our husbands. So The survey says that, and the next, click, the sitcoms say, though, what? The husbands are not worthy of any kind of respect because they're just a bunch of goofuses. And they're irresponsible, and it's a good thing that the woman is there because the man's just somebody to laugh at, and the laugh track goes off. But the woman comes in, and she's able to take charge of the situation and take it by the helm, and she's the respected one. That's what the sitcoms will tell you. That's what the media tells you. Yesterday, I took my 3 nieces and nephews, great nieces and nephews, to a movie. And it was a clean movie, and we were in the theater. But let me tell you that even in the clean movie, so the duck says, the male duck says something dumb. And then the wife duck comes up, and she puts her hand over a hand. Does she have her web? I guess she puts her web over his beak, and she says, I have to live with this every day, so believe me, I'm the one that knows that the stupid things come out of his beak. And that's just par for the course. That's just what we see over and over and over. You know, not since the honeymooners have we seen anything that was derogatory about the wives. And I'm not suggesting that either, for sure. But you wouldn't get away with that in our culture, to say the stupid things come out of the woman's mouth and for the man to put his web over her beak. You just wouldn't. But yet, our society feeds our kids this, feeds us this. So, as a matter of fact, when we get together as girls, sometimes the great temptation next from Satan is that what the girls say when we're together in our girl time. We, as Christian women, it's a great temptation that we'll just be rolling our eyes and saying, and you don't believe what he did, and he didn't even know how to, and whatever we can bring up in the negative that's disrespectful to our husbands. Be careful and don't say everything you think, and don't get caught up in what's funny that the other girls are saying about their husbands. That would be hard. That's really not helpful, is it? That's not helpful, because the Bible says next that in Ephesians 5, the very last verse of that, so it goes into, you know, the whole marriage discussion that we turn to a lot of times about the husband loving the wife as himself, as Christ loved the church, giving himself up for it, and that the wife submits to the husband. And then he goes on to say, but really I'm talking about the church and I'm comparing it to a husband and wife. And then you get to the last verse and it says, but even so, even though the parallel was about the church, let every man love his wife as himself, and see that the wife respects her husband. When we use the word see that, which is translated here, we mean you better make sure you do this. You know, if our kid says, I'll do my homework after the ball game's off, we'll say, you see that you do. You see that you do. That means you better make sure that that happens. And so here it says, husbands, love your wives, and wives what? See that you respect your husbands. So we're intentional in respect. Next. Intentional in servitude. So let me see the next click on that. Mean it after you sing it, because we sing, make me a servant, make me like you. But then we might turn around and say, well, I'm exhausted. I'm not serving anybody here in our home, and we're not, I'm sure not going to pour a glass of tea for anybody else. And, I'm not going to pick up what's on the floor, and I'm not going to rub his shoulders because, my shoulders hurt too, and all these kind of things. And we're not really servants at home, are we? This happened when my husband was sick with, we think, maybe COVID, not too long ago. He sent me a message, could you bring me some milk about the equivalent of the tall restaurant glass and put about 2 to 3 squeezes of chocolate syrup in it, please, and a bendy straw. So I said, okay, because guess what? That was service. I didn't want him down the stairs. I didn't want him touching the glasses. I sure didn't want him touching the bendy straws. So sometimes it's the little things. It's the little menial things that we serve. Next point on that, serve in the world's oldest organization, because we as women, face it, we are really good at being servants. We really are good at hopping up and taking a broom or counting the registration or, whatever it is, we're the servants. But, so you put something like association at the end of the thing you're serving for, or you put the word organization or auxiliary, and man, we can do it. We can get together and we can turn it out. But what about the world's oldest organization? What about the home? Because it was, wasn't it? It was God's first design, even before the church. And he said, you be a help suitable. Well, I don't know any more help that we could be than in service to whatever he needs. Bring me my wallet I left at home, please. Or whatever it is that he needs, then we promised to be there for him. We are the intentional help for him. And that's not a derogatory thing. When God said, I will make a help suitable for him, that was a great compliment to us as women. Because we may see the helper as the little sidekick or as the little apprentice, but help. Samuel set up the rock, Ebenezer. God has helped us this far. Psalm 46:1 says, the Lord is what? A very present help in the time of trouble. I don't think I'm having that time right now with my voice. Just a minute. So a very present help in the time of trouble. So help is a word, excuse me, help is a word that is complimentary, shows confidence in us. Next point, please. Don't forget that towel upstairs in that upper room when the disciples came in with nasty, dirty feet at that Last Supper. And they didn't want to, there wasn't a servant there. So they didn't want to wash the feet. They didn't want that nasty job. So what did they do? They ignored the problem. But then Jesus, God, who created those feet, John 1, there wasn't anything that was made that was not made by him. And so he, the one that created the feet, the one that created the dirt that was on the feet, he took a towel, God, and washed their feet. That's service. And I don't think that Jesus went down in the eyes of anybody there. I don't think it made him look a little bit less tall. I think it shot him up to giant stature where he is, where he already was. But it gave us a realization of this is how great our God is. This is how great our help is. Don't forget the towel upstairs. Because sometimes, we can throw our hands in the air and say, oh no, somebody get me a towel. And it's not a happy time, is it? It's not a happy day because somebody needs a towel. I've tried to value my towels because of this story. I've tried to take a second look and say, yay, I get to use a towel right now for a mess. And it makes me look like Jesus. And he himself said in verse 17, if you know these things, happy are you if you do them. He had just used that towel to wipe 120 toes. And he says, this is how to be happy. If you want to have a happy marriage, don't forget about being intentional in servitude. Next, intentional in being his female. Okay? There have been some books like His Needs and Her Needs and those kind of things where the author said that we need to be attractive to our husbands. And I don't want to hit on that big because I think it's already a problem in our society about so much pressure on the women for an outward appearance. And I think that 1 Peter 3 tells us to not focus on the outward appearance. And so it's not that I'm trying to say, be a good-looking woman and do all the right things I'm not trying to say that. I'm saying be intentional in being his female. What does he like? I get tickled when I read the Song of Solomon and you read what was attractive to Solomon about his beloved. And if you look at chapter 4, it says, behold, you are fair, my love. Behold, you are fair. You have dove's eyes behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats going down from Mount Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of shorn sheep, which have come up from the washing. Every one of them bears twins, and none of them is barren. Your lips are like a strand of scarlet, and your mouth is lovely. Your temples behind your veil are like a piece of pomegranate. Your neck is like the Tower of David. Okay, so, if my husband said these things to me about your hair's like a flock of sheep and your neck looks like a tower, I would not consider that complimentary. But it's what Solomon liked. My son, I always get tickled when I talk about Song of Solomon too, because when he was young and we were going to Bible Bowl, we had done Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, and he said, what's the next book of the Bible? Because I bet we'll do it for Bible Bowl next. And we said, it's Song of Solomon. And he said, oh, what's that about? And we said, well, it's about love and marriage. And he said, oh, I hope I never have to study that. And he said, didn't he have like 700 wives and 300 girlfriends? And we said, yeah, he did. And he said, who could sit through that many weddings? But Solomon, his beloved, was beautiful to him. We can look at that and we think, that doesn't sound very pretty. But what is it, next slide, that your Solomon loves? What is it that he likes? Because that's all we're talking about. And the only reason that this is important and the only reason I bring this point up is one. If you're the wife, you're the one. Whatever he loves, you need to know, because that's what he wants you to look like. Nobody else can think, what does this man like? And I'll do that for him. It's just you. You're the help suitable. You're the one. So I know that, I'm so pale that I cannot tan under any circumstance. I only turn red and never tan. But before they had these spray tans, early in our marriage, I think we had a couple of babies then, but there was this lotion that you could put on your legs, and if you put it on there a while, it would look tan. And I thought, wow, I mean, this works, like my legs look tan. And I thought it was so great, and other people did too. And I'm not talking about that I had, something way up on my legs. I'm just talking about down here on my calves. And some people said something about, well, you got tan. And I was like, yeah. And Scotty goes, what have you done to your legs? And I was like, well, I put this tanning lotion on. Do you not like it? He goes, no, I like them like they were. And so that was the end of that. I wasn't going to buy any more of that, because the only person that it matters what you look like to, really, is your Solomon, is your husband. So whatever it is, whether he likes your hair up or down or short or long, then you do that. What does your Solomon love? I know one of my friends in New Zealand got one of these little studs in her nose, and she didn't really want it, but she said, he loves those. And he asked me if I would do that. And so that was what her Solomon loved. Okay. Intentional in bringing the sermon home. So Jesus on the side of a mountain revolutionized relationships in Matthew 5-7, and revolutionized what we thought about religion and what we thought about, our relationship with God and then with man. And when I think about the things that he taught there and how that they are good for every relationship, how could we avoid that they're good for that most important earthly relationship, our relationship with our husband? And so how can we be a help suitable from those lessons? Well, my first thought was where it said in verse, I think, 25 of Matthew 5, resolve your differences with your adversary quickly. And I thought, well, he's not really our adversary. Hopefully your husband's not your adversary. There are a lot of scripture that we quote to one another like that. Like, have I become your enemy because I tell you the truth? And also my husband's always saying from Job, you speak as one of the foolish women. That's usually when I go to the mall or something and I say, I may as well buy 2 pairs of shoes because, this one's not going to match everything and it's comfortable and I like it, so why not get both of them? And he'll say something like, you speak as one of the foolish women. So we have quotes that we say all the time from scripture at home, but seriously, in Matthew 5, there are some ones. Bring up the first one. Happy, blessed, happy are the peacemakers. Okay, now this word blessed that we always say, and Lonnie Jones gets on to me for saying blessed because he says it's blessed. But it's like, well, it's been blessed all my life. So blessed are the peacemakers. And it really is translated, that word blessed there is translated happy in at least three or four other places in the New Testament. So, we could say that. Happy are the peacemakers. Well, what about at home? What about in the den, in the kitchen, in the bedroom? Blessed, are we making peace? Because if we want a happy marriage, we're going to be peacemakers. Well, there's always conflict in marriage. If you say that there's, you never had a disagreement or anything like that, I just don't believe that because it's real life. And you have conflict, but are you the peacemaker in that? Do you say things like, you never do this? That's not peacemaking language. I just eliminate right now never and eliminate right now always, because those aren't peacemaking languages. Interruption and conflict, that's not peacemaking. Getting a little louder than the other person, that's not peacemaking. Now, saying, I feel this way, that's a peacemaking strategy. I know you don't intend for it to come across this way, but it makes me feel this way. Those are some peacemaking strategies. Or sometimes it's just, if you're really upset and you don't want to talk about this, I mean, you feel like it's escalating to the point that you're not going to be a peacemaker. One of the peacemaking strategies is to stop talking about it for a while and to go in another room, perhaps. Being the help suitable, I'm going to run through these, just put them all up there, and then I want to read one thing. Just put every point on that slide up there. We don't want to check the boxes in our marriage. And we certainly don't want to be, as the Pharisee, to compare ourselves to the other spouse, to compare ourselves and say, well, I must be doing pretty good because I did this a lot better than you did. And certainly also not to compare ourselves to other marriages. And then be reconciled to your brother. And I think there's a couple of more on there, are there? And to be honest, that's a biggie. And to not want to remove the speck from somebody else's eye when you have a beam in your own. Self-examination. So the Sermon on the Mount hits home, but what I want to read to you now is we think about love, and we think about 1 Corinthians 13, and I have written something that goes along with that for wives. I like to call it 1 Corinthians 13 for wives, and we will end with that. Love sleeps on a root sticking up out of the ground and through the tent floor because camping on vacation sounded like a good idea at the time. Love suffers long. Love puts Neosporin on the cut on his head without saying, I told you that tree branch was too low to ride the mower under. Love is kind. Love kisses hello even when she comes in frazzled from a school event and he is sitting on the couch watching Wheel of Fortune and eating ice cream. Love does not envy. Love doesn't wear her husband's ears out talking about why she does all the work and someone else gets all the credit. Love does not parade itself. Love does not slam the dryer or storm down the hall. Love does not behave rudely. Love does not pout because she's sitting in McDonald's and she wanted Cheesecake Factory. Love does not seek her own. Love runs the other way when she sees an old boyfriend. Love thinks no evil. Love prays with her husband at the first hint of worry and opens up her Bible to see what to do about it. Love does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. Love breaks out the peanut butter and crackers when the doctor appointment lasted too long and the tire blew out on the side of the road and the restaurant's going to close before they get there. Love bears all things. Love says, God's got this and I believe in you. When she stares with her husband at another email about a job he didn't get, love believes all things. Love stares in the face of cancer and says, we will get through this. Love hopes all things. Love stays long nights in a cold hospital recliner holding the IV punctured hand. Love endures all things. Love is there when the bills mount up, when the tears hit the pillow, when the ugly shows through, and the storms beat on the roof. Love never fails.